तनोतु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ नमो भगवते वैवस्वताय मृत्यवे ब्रह्म विद्याचार्याय नचिकेतसे च वैवस्वताय मृत्यवे। Can you repeat that?
Vaivasvataya mrityave.
Yeah. Because otherwise, we'll get it by the time the Upanishad ends. So that is to get the blessings of the student and the teacher in this. That is, Nachiketa and Yama are both remembered in this prayer. This is Adi Shankara's prayer. That is why we chant it. So last time we saw that the pursuit of knowing oneself is not contingent upon scholarship per se, or just going and listening to every person that comes to town. It's not contingent upon memory or intellect. What is it contingent upon? Commitment. One's own commitment. A commitment to knowing the truth of oneself, that is all that it requires. And that commitment here I described last week as Atma Anugraha. You give yourself the blessing to go on this path. Usually the validation, one is looking for the validation from the teacher and from Bhagavan, from God, from Ishvara. But here, one important component one forgets while one looks for validation from outside is that if I don't give myself the permission, even 100 gods can validate me, it's of no use, right? I have to be open to it. And the Atma shows itself to the one that is open to seeking it, to the true seeker, who seeks the Atma without kama. Kama means what? Desires. Only desire. All the desires are distilled to pursuing the Atma, and to such a person the Atma shall reveal itself. This we saw. This particular canto, this particular part of the first canto is, closing, is concluding, and the next two verses are concluding verses. One of them is because what is happening here now is that this particular portion of the canto concludes the teaching. Concludes the teaching, then what are we going to do the rest of the time? No, it concludes one phase of the teaching. And what is that? The giving of the knowledge. First the teacher, in the Upanishad and in many such Upanishads, gives the knowledge. Says, like here we saw, all this is verily Om. It's Omkara, it's nothing but Omkara. And this Om is the support of the entire universe. Out of this Om, everything came into this Om, everything resolves, all is Om. Om is not any one thing. This is, in brief, that was the teaching. And then now, how to assimilate the teaching will be given in the next portion. And then how to put the same teaching in different ways, because this was just the brief synopsis. All is Om, you can understand some things. Then in the next chapter it will tell every tree is that, every being is that, every animal is that, and just like the rivers flow from the rivers flow into one ocean, all the names and forms resolve into one thing, like that it will tell later on. So it is going to give lots of examples, because the pursuit of this oneness is not for the faint-hearted. You know, it is something that it's a committed pursuit, and in this pursuit there are so many doubts, so many errors, so many areas of vagueness, and the Upanishad will systematically delve into each of these possibilities and remove those errors and doubts on her part. But here a major portion, a major way of looking at the whole thing is slowly being concluded, and the next two verses are conclusive, winding up verses. The first one of the two gives a warning. And what is this warning? The warning is that, who should gain this knowledge? Who is the person to whom this knowledge has to be given? Who is the person to gain this knowledge? And again, on the flip side, to whom shall this knowledge not be given? This is something very important, correct? Yeah. And this is something which is interesting, because this is coming in the Kathopanishad. It's also in the Mundakopanishad. It says, Shiro Vratam Yaihi Tu Na Chirnam Nadiyat. Don't give this Upanishad to people who haven't done this particular ritual, the head ritual. What is the head ritual? Huh? First you say bye-bye to the hair. Okay, no problem, that we can do. And then you take a basket of hot coals on the newly mown head, and then you do 3 rounds of the ashram and lay the coals at the feet of the Guru and say, I can't wait anymore, my head is on fire, please teach me. That is my commitment. That is called the head ritual, Shiro Vratam. And it says at the very end, don't teach this Upanishad to anyone who has not done this. And so what? So who will study the Mundaka Upanishad? Nobody, right? Who is going to do this in Kali Yuga? But still it is taught, because we are we are great experts at substituting everything. So we say, in the heart, I'm carrying the coals on the head. In the heart, my head is on fire, so it's okay. So the idea is such a person who has a lot of Shama, Dama, etc. To such a person it should be taught. So likewise, the verse that we are coming upon is a similar verse of warning. Let us take a look at that. Navirato dushcharitat,
Navirato dushcharitan,
Na shanto na samahitah, Na shanto na samahitah,
Na shanto na samahitah,
Na shanta manaso vapi,
Na shanta manaso vapi,
Prajnanenainam
Prajnanenainam
apnuyat.
Apnuyat.
Yeah, so aviratah, aviratah means what? Aviratah means, what does aviratah mean? Viratah means stopped. Aviratah means not stopped. Yeah. From what? Not stopped, what? Doing what? Dushcharitat. Dushcharita means wrongdoing. Yeah. The one who has not learned to desist from wrongdoing. What is this wrongdoing? Who decides what is wrong? That which may be wrong to someone may be very right for someone else, correct? The one who is picking the pocket feels I'm doing right, this is what I have to do to feed my family. The one whose pocket is being picked feels this person is all wrong. So who is to decide? This is what is where the dharma comes into the picture. It's not what is in one's own subjective perception of what is correct. And Adi Shankara in the Bhashya describes it very beautifully. He says, Na dushcharitat pratisiddha Pratisiddhat Shruti Smriti Avihitat Papa Karmanah Aviratah. So the one who does not desist from indulging in those actions prohibited by the Vedas, prohibited by the Vedas, prohibited by the local codes of conduct, which are called smritis, written by the sages, Dharma Shastra, by the dharmic codes, those which are prohibited, those karmas which are prohibited by the Veda, Nishiddha karma. Remember we talked about 5 kinds of karma. What are they? Nitya karma, to be done daily. Naimittika karma, to be done occasionally. And then Kamya karma, that which doesn't have to be done at all, but what I want to gain from it, ambitious, desire fulfilling type karma. And then we have Nishiddha karma or Pratisiddha karma, things which are never to be done. And then finally, because one cannot desist from doing things that are never to be done, we have what is called Prayaschitta karma, the 5th one. Prayaschitta means for doing the 4th one, I say I'm sorry, that kind of a karma. Prayaschitta. So atonement, karma of atonement. So here Nishiddha karma means things that should never be done. Cheating somebody, stealing, all those things, Samanya dharma, Vishesha dharma, everything. So so the question is this: why will someone not stop doing adharmic actions? That is a very good question to ask. Why? Like take Duryodhana, our stock example, when Lord Krishna went to do some peacemaking, before the war, he went as a mediator and he said, what are you doing? Maybe you don't know what is correct. He says, talk to the hand, Janami dharmam. I know dharma. Oh, maybe you don't know what is not to be done. Janami adharmancha. I know what is not to be done too. But then what? Janami dharmam nachame pravrittihi. I know dharma very well, but I don't feel like following it. And then what about what is not to be done? I know adharma too, but I don't feel like giving that up. And by some, fellow who is deciding what I should do, sitting in the cave of my heart, I am going to do exactly like that, impelled by some being, some voice from inside. This is Duryodhana's excuse for not following dharma. So is it safe to say Duryodhana never studied the Kathopanishad? Yes. He wouldn't have behaved like this if he had studied. So now the question is this, that what is that makes a person unable to desist from adharma, an adharmic way of life, adharmic actions?
Control of the mind, ignorance.
Rajas, the mind, yeah, the ignorance of the mind. Programming.
Basic. Go more basic.
Desire.
What kind of desires?
Oh,
Raga, dvesha.
Raga, yeah.
We all go back to everything gets distilled to raga, dvesha. That's why I said don't get too fancy. This is basic. Yeah, raga and dvesha. And the raga, dvesha themselves don't do anything. Desire, strong preferences and strong dislikes, they don't themselves do anything, but they create a pressure to go against dharma. This is what it is. So you cannot have a special Kathopanishad class, at a special time for the person who is by profession, a pickpocket, a bank robber, those kinds of people who are unable to desist from adharmic actions, because the fact that they are unable to desist from these kinds of actions prohibited by the Shruti, the Smritis, the Puranas and all the other Dharma Shastras, the texts, the sages, the codes of conduct, if they are not able to give up all that, it just means one thing. It means that they haven't interrogated their strong preferences and their preferences are out of control, because everybody has preferences, that's not the point. The point is they are not able to suspend them enough to be available for the knowledge. They continue to, imbibe the knowledge, but at the same time, what knowledge are they imbibing? Because it is like sowing seeds on hot rock. Will they germinate? No. Of what use is that? Well, at least you can have roasted seeds. No, that's in Eugene people think like that. So, but that's not the example. We are talking of germinating. That's why this is a germane example, because we are talking of the seeds germinating. So if you throw it on the hot rock, it's not going to germinate. Dagdha bijavat, this is an ancient example. Like the roasted seed, which is of no use to create another seed, like Monsanto seed. Monsanto makes a special seed. It's called Terminator seed. Yeah. And all that biodiversity is going because of this homogeneous, seed. Now, Terminator seed. What is the basic definition of seed? Tell me. It should be capable of reproduction. That's the basic requirement of being a seed. And here they have genetically modified this seed. GMS, genetically modified seed, a seed that is incapable of reproduction. So that you even if you plant like 100 acres of this seed, then you have to go back to Monsanto and purchase more seeds to sow next time. They hold the copyright for this particular crop or these particular sets of crop. Horrible. And this is what is just bringing the whole thing down. These are the modern day Rakshasas, these kinds of big, big empires. And anyhow, so the seed has to be able to reproduce, correct? And so the seed of the knowledge sown in the mind should sprout a shoot, through the thick skull. And it should be able to, sprout a shoot. But here, it's like wasting so much time on part of the teacher. This is an advice given to the teacher, because who is giving the knowledge? The teacher is giving the knowledge. So Lord Yama is saying, to the prospective teachers, including Nachiketa, do not waste your time trying to give this seed of this knowledge to where it will not take root, it will not bear fruit. And so what is the point, It's like, the person who studies this and is not able to, go away from all these kinds of wrong actions, then they are wasting their time. They are wasting your time also. It's an entirely a big waste of time. Avirataha dushcharitat. So the first kind of people not to give this knowledge is who? Avirataha, not desisting from, dushcharitat, wrong conduct. Charita, conduct, dush, whenever you put dush, bad conduct. Yeah. Bad conduct that goes against dharma, where they continue to hurt people. So it's almost like a clash. Because what is this knowledge about oneness, ahimsa, and that the whole world is just you, there is nothing other than you. It is about compassion. It is about, seeing all the bhutas as an extension of you. And here the person is a cut purse, and so, cutting every, thing, pocket that comes into view. This is not the kind of person, because there is a contradiction between what the knowledge is trying to bring out and then what this person's way of life is. So that is the first kind of person never to give this knowledge to. And then the second kind of person is described in the second here, na ashantaha. Ashantaha. And we have been studying in the Panchadashi, Shanta Vrittis. The word Shanta we know from Sham, past passive participle of Sham, to quieten, to be resolved, Shanta, the one who is calm. Ashanta, the one who is very calm, correct?
No.
Not calm at all. It's the negative part, particle. Not calm at all. Yeah. So the one who is uncalm means, in other words, the one who is extremely disturbed. And Adi Shankara in the Bhashya says something. Ashantah anuparatah na api anuparatah na api indriya laulyat. Laulya means reveling in. Yeah. Indriya means sense organs. So reveling not in the sense organs. The person is not saying, oh, such nice taste buds I have, such nice eyes I have. That's not what the person is saying. The sense organs stand for the sense objects. The objects where the sense organs are, that is what it stands for. So Indriya Laulyam means reveling in the sense objects, meaning Ashanta, disturbed. Disturbed while the first person was disturbing to others, this person Swayam disturbed. Herself disturbed. Why? Because there is not that calmness is not there. Because there are too many distractions. They may come to class, usually somebody has to bring them, and they will be physically there, and where will the mind be? All over the place. Mind will be thinking about so many things, what movie is playing, what time is it, I hope the class lets out at a time that I can go and catch that film or that television show. Or the person might think that, okay, what shall I make tomorrow, what shall I cook to eat tomorrow, what is in the fridge, oh, I have to go shopping, like this, so many distractions. And Indriya Laulyam is a particular, it's the very derogatory expression what Adi Shankara gives here, in the sense that it's a repeated revelry, Like, elsewhere he gives this unsavory example of the pig, rolling in the filth constantly, And here, the person who has prakrita buddhi. There are two kinds of distinctions that Adi Shankara makes in the Kathopanishad. The one with Samskrita buddhi and one with Prakrita buddhi. Who is the one with a Samskrita buddhi? A buddhi that knows Sanskrit.
No.
No? Are you sure? Samskritam means well done. So a buddhi that is cultured. A buddhi that is not so distracted and all over the place. A buddhi that has the value for this knowledge. Samskrita buddhi. Prakrita buddhi means prakritehe iyam prakritam, means as nature made. Nature made means like a wild animal, Suddenly it feels like scratching, it will go like that, Suddenly it feels like making faces, the monkey will start doing like that. And suddenly it feels like kicking, Who? The teacher, A donkey will not think this is the teacher standing, this is a sadhu, I should not kick. It will kick. Therefore the sadhu should know, do not stand behind a donkey. You should tell the sadhu, not the donkey, Because they are all prakrita animals, just as they are programmed according to nature, and they don't, they don't do anything, to try to use some viveka there, and the donkey doesn't say, I have to have viveka, what should I pursue, Donkey doesn't think like that. Monkey doesn't say, oh, I have to give up this habit of making faces. It doesn't say that. I have a raga for trees. I have to give up that. I have to come down to the earth and I have to, become a good monkey. It doesn't say that. Neither does the monkey say, I should do some meditation. I have a monkey mind. It doesn't say all those things. It is happy being what it is, and in a way they are freer because those are all bhoga sharirani. What is bhoga sharirani?
A body,
A body where
they consume.
Yeah, a body where only papas are exhausted. There is no new karma being accrued because they are incapable of making decisions. But our fellow, this idiot over here, this fellow is capable of being concentrating, capable of letting go of the ragas and the dveshas, but chooses not to. Strong preferences are in the mind, and the person is, the first one is the one who constantly violates dharma. The second one is the one who is given to overly, prakriti seva. Is overly, constantly focused on oneself and all the comforts that one can get. So such a person is not available for the knowledge. Why? Obvious. Because even sitting in the class they will be not here, so what's the point? So that's the second kind of persons that Lord Yama says the knowledge must not be given. And then Ashantah na abhi indriya laulyat. Yeah, that was the earlier one. Ashantah na uparatah na api asamahitah anekagramana. Anekagramanaha vikshipta chittaha. Vikshipta chittaha. So the first one is ashantaha and the second one is in this asamahitaha. The last one, the third one, asamahitaha. Samahitaha means, the one who is samahitaha comes from samadhanam. What is samadhanam? Single-minded focus for the teaching. So the one who doesn't have that qualification called samadhanam is called asamahitaha. No, there is no single-mindedness of the pursuit. The person, in other words, are all over the place, and Adi Shankara uses the word vikshipta chittaha. The one vikshipta means thrown around, whose thoughts are bouncing around in the head. They are just going round and round, they are unable to focus. And if you say Tattvamasi, they will barely hear the word Tat, and after that it's gone. Yeah. It's totally gone. Not that they are forgetful, they don't even give themselves a chance, they are not paying attention. They are unable to pay attention. And so this, on the other end of the continuum, this could include ADD, ADHD, all that. But then here is the milder form on this side of the continuum of an extremely distracted and restless person. This is what is called asamahitaha. And then anekagramanaha vikshipta chittaha. Then the next one is, don't give it to one more person. Who is the other person? Na ashanta manasaha. So you had ashantaha there, correct? And then now ashanta manasaha. What is this ashanta manasaha? The person here is phalartitvat na abhi ashanta manasaha vyaprita chittaha. So here that was vikshipta chittaha. This one is vyaprita chittaha. This is the distinction according to Adi Shankara. So vikshipta chittaha means what? The one who is extremely distracted. Vyaprita chittaha means the one who is distracted, all right, but the mind is plotting something else, very focused. The focus is somewhere else. Yeah, how to win the lottery, what are the odds? Today I have come to class but without solving the New York crossword puzzle. So what was that 13 down and what is 15 across? Very carefully they will be thinking, but the mind will not be in the knowledge. Correct? So phalarthitvat means they are always having strong ambitions. Phalarthi, the one who is focused on the fruit, rather than the process. And here in Vedanta, such a person is useless, because what is the fruit of this knowledge? You. Who is the pursuer? You. Well, what do you gain? You. And who is the gainer? You. Everything is you. The gain is as though gain, because the seeker is already the sought. Right? So this vyaprita chittaha means the one who is constantly plotting. And there are some people like that. They will start plotting about your life also if they spend 5 minutes with you. They will ask a few questions. So what do you do? I have some business. So what is it that you're selling? Oh, just some products. I don't sell the products directly. I just meet people and put them together, the products and the people. That's all I do. So what's your website? They are asking, and then the person thinks, oh, they are showing some interest in me, and they will tell. Well, what kind of search engines are you using? Are you on top? No, you are not on top. They will Google the website immediately and see. And then they will say, this is what you should be doing. I have this plan and I have this, and we should, these grandiose planners. Yeah. Sudden grandiose plan out of nowhere, even in your life. And they will give you so much hope, all the hope you never had in this life they will give. But it's all empty hope. It's not backed by funds. It's not backed by anything. It's not backed by logic. It's not a practical solution. Some kind of a grandiose, these planners. It's like, there is a mental condition called bipolar disorder, And in this bipolar, apparently what happens is that the person goes through certain highs and lows. And in this high phase, they feel so confident and they start plotting everything. They are very ambitious, extremely reckless, so over hopeful, overjoyed, and on this high of planning everything in not only in their lives but in the lives of all their friends and neighbors. And then 2 days later the low hits, and then everything, because they are not able to follow through on any of their plans. So like that, Ashanta Manasaha, that's why the Manasa word is come here. The one who is not very balanced mentally, in the sense that one is overly interested in the fruit of the action and is a phalarthi, is ambitious, may not be bipolar but behaves as though it mimics that disorder in a much smaller and a less disturbed way. And so that kind of the one who keeps going high and low, the one who is not, as the Bhagavad Gita calls it, samatvam yoga uchyate, the one who is not a yogi, the one who doesn't have equilibrium, the one who is constantly creating drama, and after drama what happens? Trauma, drama, trauma, drama, trauma. Otherwise their food doesn't get digested. This yo-yo personality. And some people are like that. They want to create a lot of drama, and then after that they have drama, and then again lot of drama, lot of conflict, they are very conflicted inside. And so the person's pursuit is always on this big grand plan. And so if Vedanta doesn't have a grand plan, then what does it say? You are the grandest thing there is. So there is no need for any other grandiosity, because you are grand. You are already grand. You don't need to become grand. And this person gets angry. The Ashanta Manasaha gets very annoyed. What do you mean? I need to do something. What are you doing with this knowledge? And they will ask me also, where are you advertising? That's not enough. You have to do this, you have to go there, you have to get more students. I said, no, I don't want anybody, it's just enough to teach. No, you have to do this, you have to manufacture this. They will try to be very, very grand about it. And then what, it's all just when you open the soda can, what happens? There is a lot of, fizz, very fizzy, like that fizzy drink, the noise comes. And then 2 minutes later it's flat. It has flat lined. This is called Ashanta Manasa. 2 minutes later it's all gone, because now they are in some doldrum or the other. And so such a person is also not a candidate for this knowledge, says Lord Yama. And then finally what? Prajnanena enam apnuyat. Then of course the question comes, who is the person to get this? You are just telling me all kinds of people who should not get this. This person should not be given this knowledge. Dushcharita must not be given this knowledge. Ashantah must not be given this knowledge. Asamahitah must not be given this knowledge. Ashanta Manasah even must not be given this knowledge. Pray tell who should be given the knowledge. Because you are telling all these negative examples. Who should deserve this knowledge? And the answer for that is the one who is, prajnanam. Prajnanam is the one who has viveka. Prajnana means here viveka, vairagya, a practical understanding of everything. This is not connected. Yeah.
Oh.
So prajnana here means the one who is not any of these things. So the one who is dharmic is understood by the word prajnanam, and here prajnana means the one who is completely with oneself available for the teaching. So that's one meaning of the word prajnana. Prajnana is referring here to the person, and because it's in the third case, prajnana can also refers to the mode of learning is by Brahma Vidya alone, and that is how Adi Shankara takes it. Brahma Vidya alone is the prajnana. So in the first reading you can say a person who has the wherewithal of all these things, what is that? Shama, Dama, all the qualifications that we have talked about. That is the person who is pragmatic, who is dharmic, and who is committed to this knowledge. The second way of looking at it is that it is the means of this knowledge is Brahma Vidya. What is Brahma Vidya? This teaching is called Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of Brahman as yourself, the knowledge of yourself as the whole, as nothing other than the whole, as limitless. That is prajnana. Now, prajnanena Brahma Vidya Vijnanena Enam Prakrita Atmanam. What is this Enam? The Atma under discussion. Enam Apnuyat, may one gain. And then, it says that who is the person who is qualified? Yastu Duschcharitad Aviratah Indriya Laulyacha Samahita Chittah Samadhana Phalad Api Upashanta Manasah Acharyavan Prajnanena Yathoktam Atmanam Prapnoti Ityarthah. So Acharyavan he adds here, Adi Shankara. So it's not enough to be a prajnana, it's not enough to say I want Brahma Vidya, but you should also be blessed with a teacher, because without the teacher the teaching cannot come at all. So this is a warning verse, a warning mantra about who does not deserve this knowledge. And why does it come? As I said, it is the end of the one portion of the teaching, it's winding up. But another reason why Lord Yama puts it here quietly is so that everybody can recount what are the qualifications. And if anything is missing or amiss, quickly refurbish oneself with those qualifications. So that is another reason. This is like a checkpoint, You say check, Shama check, Dama check, Uparati check, Titiksha, Titiksha means forbearance. So these are all the qualifications. So you know where you are, you put a check mark, and the ones that need to be gained, you also make a mental note of it. That's why. Now for what is called Phalashruti. Phalashruti means what do you gain out of this? And this is very important, and although the Upanishad is not ending, the person's titiksha, as I told you, is ending. The person's patience is ending. Because the person has been sitting here for so long listening to all the verses, endless dialogue between Lord Yama and this young boy, Nachiketa, and they are keeping on talking, and one boon after the other is being given, knowledge is being given, and immediately the human mind, kicks into high gear and asks the question, isse mujhe kya milega? What am I going to get out of this? What am I going to get? I'm spending so much time, and I'm sure that maybe the 1 month course people are also asking this, 3 classes a day, tomorrow July 4th, all day classes, and what is this, and are we going to really get anything out of this? What is it that we are going to get? What will I become at the end of this knowledge? Once I gain this knowledge, what kind of transformations can I expect? And this is given in a very mystical and a kind of a terse verse. And this mantra, the next one, let us see that. Yasya brahma cha
यस्य ब्रह्म च
kshatram
क्षत्रं च
ubhe bhavatah
उभे भवतः
odanah
ओदनः
mrityuh yasya
मृत्युर्यस्य
upasechanam
उपसेचनं
कः इत्था वेद
कहिता वेद
यत्र सः.
यत्र सः.
Yeah. So let us just see the translation and then you will see why it doesn't make sense. You know? Yeah. So, yasya, for whom? Brahmacha, kshatrancha. The divisions in the society, such as Brahmana, Kshatriya, etc. Ubhe bhavatah. Both these divisions become food. Odanaha. Odanaha means food. Mrityuhu, and death for whom yasya is a pickle on a side dish, a condiment at the end of the plate. Kaha ittha veda yatra saha. It's kind of, there's not really a proper translation for kaha ittha veda yatra saha, meaning that how can one know thus as to where the self is, meaning where one is after the gain of this knowledge, so what to talk of the self, the whole society, the whole world, everything is gobbled up. So this is the exact translation. What do you make out of this? After gaining self-knowledge, one becomes a cannibal because one starts to eat one's fellow people, fellow men and women. No. So the idea is that the divisions in the society, it's a very unique way, it's a nice verse, little difficult, little involved and difficult to understand, that's all, if you don't know the context. So, in the society, there are certain divisions, correct? And Brahmana and Kshatriya in the ancient Vedic society were the cream of the crop. The Brahmanas were the knowledge bearers and the Kshatriya were the weapon bearers, they were the protectors, and so of the society and of the community, and they were the kings. So these were the two people who were the cream of the crop, and there were other divisions. And so here comes the person of self-knowledge and makes rice and dal out of each of these divisions. Yeah. Meaning what? When you make something into a meal, it becomes an object of consumption, meaning those divisions are no longer there for you. You are neither elated by those divisions, nor you feel I am victimized by those divisions. You just make short shrift of the division, you make a meal out of it. You make a square meal of those divisions, means for whom those divisions have disappeared as the rice does in the course of a meal. And when do the divisions disappear? Go back, this is such a clever verse. Go back to Nachiketa's third question, the third boon. Anyatra dharmat, anyatra adharmat, anyatra asmat kritat akritat, anyatra bhutacha bhavyacha, yat tat vadasi, yat tat vethi, tad vada. Yat tat veda savada, that is what he says. Please teach me that which is away from what is good, which is not bound by what is not good, which transcends those divisions of good and bad, transcends the division of karma and karma phala, punya and papa, and transcends time, the past and the future and and all these things, present also, transcends these divisions of time. Teach me that which transcends all the divisions, correct? That was his question. And finally, Lord Yama is answering him exactly like that. The one who gains this knowledge assimilates the divisions and transcends them. accommodates the divisions and transcends them also. Accommodates the divisions very objectively, sees their need for it, but is not coming under the spell of these divisions. Whether it's the division of society, whether it's the division of time, whether it's the division of all this, so-called good and bad, does not come under their spell. So rice and dal are the Brahmana and the Kshatriya. Finished. Mix them up and gobble them up. Meaning, these divisions which people make a big deal out of. And everybody, worships and respects who? There is a Shobhana Adhyasa, a kind of a positive projection on these divisions. Everybody wants to become that. Everybody wants to gain the knowledge that the Brahmana has. Everybody wants to have the power that the Kshatriya has. So we shouldn't take the people representing the division. You should see what the divisions stand for, abstractedly. So knowledge and power, who doesn't want? Tell me. So Brahmana stands for knowledge, Kshatriya for power. Knowledge and power, if you have both those, then nothing else is, nothing else is needed. Power includes resources and money. Knowledge includes information, know-how, and the ability to, and the power includes the ability to command over people and their resources and all these things, and the know-how of how to do it. So what more is needed? One is the king in a certain way, but for this person is not impressed by that. As it were as a little snack, as a consumable meal, because the kind of knowledge and the kind of power that they enjoy by knowing Brahman, this is nothing. This is just a one meal which is not even a remarkable meal, a meal that is just consumed and forgotten. Yeah. A kind of an unexceptional meal, an everyday. Like sometimes you say, okay, what did you have for breakfast? You don't even remember, because who wants to recall cereal? It's just, especially if it's a cereal affair, every day you're eating it. So nobody is going to say, I had such wonderful cereal and I had it with cold milk. Nobody is going to, it's unremarkable, If you have some other thing, if you have, some kind of waffles or, potatoes or dosa, something, big, then you will say, oh, I had that. Otherwise, nobody even remembers what you had for breakfast. So like this, the person of knowledge abides in her own power, her own glory, her own knowledge of oneself, which is as vast as, as Brahman itself, limitlessly whole. And for this person, if somebody says, I have so many heads of cattle, I have so many companies, I have read so many, I have memorized all these, branches of knowledge, and I have all these things too, I have degree and pedigree. If somebody comes and says, they're not even moved. They don't think, oh, I have to click a photo with them because, I should have a photo with all the famous people. Like whenever people see Obama, the president, everybody wants to click a photo and then they will blow up the photo and put it in their living room. Why? Not because they want to look at it. And then next day they will have a potluck. Come, see my photo with Obama, They will want everyone to see. Even if they didn't vote for him, they will want that. And so that just shows that even if they particularly didn't care to bring him in office, the power of the office is such that everybody is attracted to this power and mesmerized by this power, and they become power hungry. And then, and then they become knowledge hungry also. They keep studying, and knowledge is highly valued in most societies. And for this knowledge you get all these accolades, you get all these things, and so the knowledge is very highly valued, so they keep, hankering after power and knowledge. And here the person is so over all that. Why? Because the person abides in a power that never becomes powerless. That kind of power. A power that never corrupts, a power that never becomes powerless. Because with all the other power, even Obama's power, after what, 2016, it's a waning power. No, but he will always be referred to as the president. Yeah, but he will just open a library like the other presidents and, sit somewhere in Chicago and, and cut some ribbons at important functions. That's all. You inaugurate something. So you just have a ribbon cutting portfolio, a glorious portfolio, especially with all these, long life right now, and younger people being elected to office. So many presidents we have living right now. We have Carter, who is living. Who else is living? Yes, the two Bushes are living, and this one is living. Clinton is living. 5 presidents are living now. So it's doesn't create much of a thing. To be one among 5, what's the big deal? Yeah. So even the highest office, it becomes powerless. One is bereft of that power. After 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending on what the electoral things are in each country, it's gone. And even the most knowledgeable person cannot know everything. Correct? There'll always be another upstart who knows more than this person. Who has memorized one more Veda, because if this person is a Dvivedi means a 2 Veda person, there will be always a Trivedi, the one who has 3 Vedas under the belt. And then finally the Trivedi is beaten over the head by someone called Chaturvedi, the one who has memorized all the 4 Vedas. Finished. What else is there? And so then again you become sad. Even though you have so much knowledge, you become sad. And anticipating the power going, you become sad. And here is a person who gobbles up all these powers and these distinctions, because they have a power that is never powerless, because it's not dependent on anything else. That is why it never becomes powerless. It's a power that one commands, which is not dependent on anybody else, on anything else. Sve mahimni tishtati, resides in and rests in its own glory. It does not rest upon an office. It does not rest upon information crammed up in the head. It does not rest upon somebody's, benign, what's that? Good offices, goodwill. It does not rest upon a very unstable electorate. It's a power that rests on oneself alone. Self-standing, self-evident power. And similarly, the knowledge, that knowledge not of one thing. Because if you have knowledge of one thing, then you always don't have the knowledge of the next thing. If you are a botanist, and you have knowledge of one particular thing, then you don't have knowledge of another tree. Same thing, if you are a person who is a zoologist, you study one animal, whole life goes. Yeah. The whole life goes. There was one person. There's one person called Bhatnagar. It's an Indian name, and he studies only bats. So in the United States, they never say Bhatnagar, Bhatnagar. So that is how they would pronounce. So only bats. Whole life is given to bats. And then if you know bat, you don't know hat, you don't know cat, you don't know rat, you don't know mat. The number of things that you don't know is much more than what you know. Correct? But here this knowledge, yena vijnanena sarvam vijnatam bhavati iva, by which knowledge all knowledges are as though gained. That which is the truth of the bat, rat, hat, mat, cat. Yeah, that which makes bat, bat, rat, rat, mat, mat, hat, hat, cat, cat. That which makes that particular thing. And what is that? That thing cannot be in that thing. That is away from everything, but at the same time as though manifest as those very things. So that Brahman manifest as bat, cat, hat, rat, mat, neither bat, nor hat, nor cat, nor rat, nor mat. This is the knowledge. The knowledge of that master key is there. That master key is that which pervades this entire universe, that truth of oneself without becoming any one thing. This is the master key. So the one who has that, the one who has the power, which doesn't which doesn't have to prop on someone else, the one who has this knowledge, what more can they want? Correct? So they gobble up the divisions. They are not bothered if someone says, I'm the president, okay, be the president, who cares, They gobble up those divisions. They have no, they have no penchant for, gaining any of those things, because everything they have. And what about death? Are they afraid of death? And Lord Yama is the teacher here, correct? he makes a joke on himself. Yama has a nice sense of humor, as we have seen, and as we will continue to see. He's got a tongue-in-cheek humor, and he makes a lot of number of death jokes. This is why I'm going to take 3-4 more minutes because I want to finish this. Yeah, so he makes a few death jokes because he has a sense of humor. And what does he say here? He says, so what is this? Isn't this person afraid of anything? Not afraid of Brahmana, not afraid of Kshatriya, not afraid of people with power, people with knowledge, not afraid of not having all these things. Must be surely afraid of death. In this imagery of the plate, and if the Brahmana and the Kshatriya are the two powerful positions in society, if power and knowledge are the person's rice and dal, and the little condiment to just touch, you don't have to eat the whole thing, a little thing to touch and taste, that is death. Mrityuhu upasechanam. Yeah, death is like a little salsa, a dip that you put your chip in and just, that's it. Meaning what? You're not affected by death. Death also is there. At least the other two, you filled your hunger. Death has no purpose in your life. Death is nothing to be afraid of. You have a dalliance with death because you are in the hands of Ishvara. Why are you afraid of death? Because you are not, you're not as good as the body. Why would you be afraid of death? Oh, but the body dies, let it die. Oh, but then what if you haven't finished experiencing everything? Well, what is there to experience? If you know the experiencer, you know everything. So if you know the experiencer, you know the experienced is nothing but a projection of the experiencer. So you don't have to know each and every object of experience. If you know the experiencer and the experienced are one and the same truth, and that I am neither the experienced nor the experiencer, I know that. And so, but what if aren't you afraid? What kind of death it will be? Let it be any kind of death. What is there to be afraid of? And so, the body will go away. Let it go. Mind will also go. Let it go. But what will happen? I will still be there. I was there before. I wasn't born. How will you be there? The same way I was there before this body came into being, I was there. After this body goes also, I will be there. The one who is abiding in this knowledge, that is the person of knowledge. And this is what you get out of gaining this teaching. This is what you get. A complete fearlessness, a complete disenchantment for all the things that you usually used to have a powerful projection on wanting to gain. A disenchantment not in a bad way, because it is already gained. There is no need to go around running after power, running after name, fame, because all that you gain by gaining Brahman. Everything you gain. By just sitting in one place under a tree, the sadhu gains all the things that the biggest ruler in the biggest country imaginable has, without the headaches. Yeah. So therefore, this ka ittha veda yatra saha, who can say where this Brahman is? Because where this Brahman, it's a rhetorical question. Meaning that Brahman who makes short shrift of this Jagat, you can't even ask the question where it is, because the where begs the question that you are taking space as a absolute. Space is not an absolute entity. Yeah. This person who knows Brahman is absolute, putting to rest completely the question who and where. Because who you ask only when you want to, there are so many things, and you say which one. You can't ask the self which one is the self, because there is only one, right? And you can't ask the question where is the self. The answer is everywhere. And in fact, even everywhere it falls short, because when you say everywhere, what are you saying? You are taking space for granted. So here the everywhere also goes away, and all that is left is one consciousness, limitless, the one who abides as that consciousness both in the body and after the body goes. The one is still consciousness without any loss at all. So the body is a plus for this consciousness. It's value added, like the tax, there's a certain tax. So it's value added. So infinity plus body. That's good, because I can run around, I have more fun because I have a body. Infinity plus mind. Infinity minus body, still infinite. Infinity minus mind, still infinite. And so with these words, the second adhyaya in the first canto, in the first valli, comes to an end. And in the next verse, in the next chapter or a segment, with Tritiya Valli, in the next Valli, we are going to study how to make our daily lives in tandem, flow in tandem with this knowledge. What should be done to abolish certain ways of in which the inner ways in which the duality gets creeped in within. It's a very wonderful section, and upon which the Bhagavad Gita is based. It has this wonderful chariot imagery which everybody will enjoy. So we will study that next time. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Questions? While one is doing nididhyasana, should one's attitude towards the action be of Ishwararpana Buddhi, or should we fake it to make it and try to identify with the actionless self, attributing as though action to the mind-body complex? Which is recommended as the better attitude to cultivate, and for whom? Nice question. I would say neither. Nididhyasana means dwelling upon the words of the Upanishad, whose meaning you have ascertained after studying with the teacher, and those words you recall in your spare time while not doing anything in particular, or you could be doing something in particular. You are not trying to identify with anything, you are recalling the words and seeing their meaning as yourself. Yeah. So rather than saying that there is an actionless self and I want to identify with that, you turn it around a bit and make it a little more accessible, in the sense that you say that asangoham, I am uninvolved. This is a word, this is a phrase from the Upanishad. So in the Upanishad there is a sentence, asangoham punah punaha. Again and again I am not involved with the body, with the mind, the senses. See the meaning. And aham is already there. The word aham means I. So I is already in the sentence, so that quote unquote identification is happening, albeit not on a conscious level. You see the meaning, and then you see that the meaning is not, is you. The meaning merges in you when you really understand the meaning. So that is the best way to really keep reading the words that you have understood, and dwell on them. Dwell on them. Be with those words. That is the one. That is the way I would say. Let's see. Everything comes from Om, rests in Om and dissolves in Om. When you say something is created in Om, has Om undergone any change? No. Om is Om sweet Om. Om was Om sweet Om. Om hasn't undergone any change. All you have to do is, when you attribute it to the cause, when you look upon Om, you can look upon Om in two ways. You can look upon Om as that which is yourself, that which is Brahman, actionless, and that which is free of time, free of everything. You can look at Om as Satyam Jnanam Anantam, and the Mandukya Upanishad also looks at Om as Jagat Karanam, as the cause of the universe, from which everything comes, into which everything resolves. Om is a name for Ishvara. So out of Ishvara everything comes. When you say, has Ishvara undergone any change? Not really. Ishvara hasn't undergone any change. And so therefore we have to understand that when you say everything comes out of Om, you have to say as though, because the jagat is as though. Jayate gacchati iti jagat. That which is born and gone is jagat. So really the jagat is not is mithya. So we don't take that into account. Okay? Yeah. Then there was a question. Can you please repeat? Where did that question go? Can you please repeat the who should not gain this knowledge? Yeah, somebody asked that. I am not able to find that question. There it is. Who should not gain this knowledge? So the ones who have not departed from adharma, meaning who are still doing adharma, the ones who don't have a shanta mind, the one whose minds are always, after sense or sensory objects, number 2. Number 3, the people who are having grandiose plans of all kinds. And number 4, people who cannot sit and focus. These are the people, correct? Have I covered all of them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are the people. Then there was one more question somewhere here. I think I have covered all. Yeah. Dharma changes from place to place. What dharma at one place might be adharmic. Yeah, that's what you have to, therefore, focus on samanya dharma. Samanya dharma. That is what is talked about. That's why it said, look at Adi Shankara's definition, avihitat, from the Shruti, from the point of view of the Veda, the samanya dharma, certain things don't change. It is always wrong to kill, it is always wrong to cheat, it is always wrong to defraud. So therefore those things one doesn't do. That is how to qualify. Okay? Yeah. If samanya dharma is clear, vishesha dharma naturally follows. Other questions here? Yeah.
What if somebody who is in the point where they're not practicing a dharma, they're following the dharma, but they have tendency, maybe distracted mind, or something will happen where those other qualities will emerge and then fall back into normalcy, but still emerges. What would you recommend?
Yeah, meditation. Little meditation. Calmness. Do things that calm yourself down. Such a person should calm down in a certain way. And if you focus little bit every day, then focus becomes part of your life. And you're able to focus sitting in the class as well. One is able to focus. Arjuna had Ashanta Manasa when Krishna gave him the knowledge of oneness. How is this in accordance with what we learnt? Arjuna did not have Ashanta Manasa. Yeah. Ashanta Manasa, we have to look at the definition here. And what is the Ashanta Manasa? Let us look at Adi Shankara's definition again. Ashanta Manasa is halarthi and vyaprita chittaha. The one who is making grandiose plans. That is Ashanta Manasa. Arjuna was caught in a dharma sankata. He wasn't Ashanta Manasa. In fact, he surrendered completely and said, Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. So really, Arjuna is seen as an exalted soul who was ready for this knowledge. Yeah. Okay. Was knowledge ever given to Vaishyas even when they were dharmic? Of course. Its knowledge is not about the divisions. It's not about that at all. You can, because the knowledge, people qualify for the knowledge based on the mental qualification, not based on their standing in society. That is not, yeah. Not now, because we have a lecture by a doctor. Another time you catch me. The next 3 days going to be little busy. Maybe in the weekend you can ask. Okay? Yeah. We have now to go to a lecture, and so people are going to start coming. So therefore, I will not be able to take more questions now, but in the weekend you can ask. Okay. All the best. Om Namah Shivaya.